Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Win the Day podcast. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you who are here listening right now. Y'all mean the absolute world to me. Today, we are joined by Chad Schieler. Chad currently is a real estate investor local to the Indianapolis area. Chad began his investing career in early 2020 and has undertaken many projects since and before ultimately forming Focus Capital LLC. Today, Chad is a general partner on 139 units and a limited partner on 900 plus units across the US. His team is currently managing 400 plus clients on a regular basis. So, as you can tell, he has an immense track record of real estate deals and experience, which is what we're going to talk about today. So, without any further ado, let me introduce you all to the man himself, Chad Schieler. How are you doing today, Chad?
Good, Nico, man. Thanks for having me on board here. Appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Yeah, so I want to start this podcast and kind of just understand you a little bit more about your story and kind of what you did to get to where you are now.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for the introduction. I mean, that's very humbling. But took many years, like you noticed there. But high level, I'm actually from West Lafayette, Indiana, born and raised. That's where you're at now, at Purdue. Live in Fishers, Indiana now with my wife and my daughter. I love all kinds of outdoor sports, love anything fitness related. But I spent the last 17 years in the credit card processing space. And back in '07, started doing that. And, I felt like after about 12 years, I had golden handcuffs onto that business to where I was making great money and I could serve customers and use some of my skills, but I always felt like there was something else that I wasn't fulfilled with. That's something I was lacking. And looked at real estate as the next avenue for me to pursue and to be challenged. I'm a very kind of driven guy. I like leading with purpose and having fulfillment and being like a 10x guy. And I always felt like I was like in a 2x environment though. Like I was in this box. I just couldn't like scale the business. I couldn't really grow it. And like, you know what? Real estate is probably one of those ways I could grow the business. I could scale it and could make it my own and have more security for my family. So I'm the kind of guy where I overanalyze everything usually to where it's a fault of mine. And I over researched. I read like probably 50 books and podcasts. Of course, the Purple Book. Sorry, I'll start with that. We all know that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And coffee meetings, lunch meetings. And after 3 years, I finally bought my first 4 unit deal in 2020. And I bought this deal, and it could have been a huge dumpster fire, honestly. Like I paid too much for it. I didn't get an inspection. I actually waived the inspection. It was fully vacant in a rough area of town. Ended up being a really good deal, but I got my first deal done, and that was the important thing, is getting your first deal there under your belt. I went from that deal, that 4 unit, which I sold about a year and a half later, to now we're doing a $32 million project in the best market in the Midwest. So that's kind of how it's all transpired. We've done 8 deals so far, went full cycle on 2. The third one's full cycle next month. And we've done about $46 million in deals so far in 3 years.
Wow, man. Congratulations. That is just massive growth. 3 years and you're already doing those numbers. That's impressive. So kind of explain to me why and how you started Focus Capital.
Yeah, I did the first 4 deals on my own with my own money. And I chose that route because I knew I'd make mistakes. And I wanted to use my own capital first instead of investors' capital. And maybe it was a longer path to me to get to where I'm at today, but I feel like I appreciate it better instead of my investors, to where I really wanted to, I placed their capital above my own, honestly. And that's important people understand, is like, that is so important, is other people's money. And don't use it loosely. It's not just a loose term to use around OPM. So I did the first one myself, did some partnerships along the way there with a couple other guys with their own money, joint ventures. And I formed Focus Capital because I learned more about myself, that I'm a builder. Like I've loved woodworking my whole entire life, build things out of wood, furniture, trim, like desks and 4-H and all that kind of stuff. And I like to build things out of with my hands, but also I like to build teams. I like to build projects. I like to build companies, and I'm learning that about myself. And I had some partnerships that weren't like the most fluid partnerships. We were kind of like the same kind of people. And for a partnership to work really well, you got to have opposites, like a marriage, like a team. opposites attract, and that's what makes a team go really well. So this past December of 2022, I decided I'm going to form my own company. I'm going to take capital raising and start doing that myself. I hadn't done it yet at all until this past January, actually, and form my own team. So started doing that. I knew I'd be better as a leader by having people that I could have accountability and develop culture and develop a company. So that's how it started.
Gotcha. That's amazing. So you mentioned that you love building things and you love building your team. What were some of the first like roles that you were looking for when building your team?
The first thing, so they always say, look at what your time's worth on an hourly basis. Take what you make per year, what you want to make per year, divide it by the hourly. Let's say your time's worth $100 an hour. If you're doing, you have to look at what all you're doing on a day-to-day basis. If you're doing things that you could hire somebody for $10 an hour, like an admin or a VA, outsource those first. Get rid of the smallest things off your plate first that's taking up all of your time. That way you can focus your time on the 20% of the things that bring you 80% of the results. So
Yeah.
that was my first lesson is I hired a VA, got an admin, I bought my time back. You're basically buying back your time, right?
Hmm.
So at that point, 1 + 1's not two. One plus one's like four, because now you've got back all those hours that you were doing that $20 per hour task. You can now focus on that $1,000 task.
Yeah.
So that was the first hire as an admin. The next hire I brought on was actually an operations person that make us 6 figures a year, and that was a big hire. But
Hmm.
what I realized there is you got to focus on your strengths, and my strength and what I wanted to do and what I was good at was not the asset management piece of the business.
Okay.
It's very, very important, right? It's so important to deal with, but you've got to have. So I went for the cream of the crop. I found a really talented, very, very experienced, almost 20 years experience in this industry. I found a great person there and brought her on board. And that way she took over all the asset management properties.
That's huge. And I love how you brought up the 80/20 rule, finding those people who can finding that 20% to get the 80% output. I love how you brought that up. I think that's a very big lesson that people need to learn and just, shift their perspective towards within a business sense, I would say. Um, but I want to kind of shift this conversation over to how like recent graduates can kind of get into real estate investing. So my question is, how can college grads, someone like me who's going to be graduating in college in May, get started in real estate investing like right out of college?
You know, it's tough at first, man. It really is. It's
Yeah.
tough. You don't have any skills yet. You don't have a lot of the big network. You don't have a lot of money. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's like, what do you do, right? So you gotta then. I think a couple of things. You gotta hone into what are your skills, and I think anybody can go find a deal. If you
Hmm.
could be a deal finder and go find an investment, you can find somebody else that can partner with you to manage it and find the money. So
Hmm.
I think probably the easiest way to get into it would be to find a deal and then find a buddy to help manage it with you, find the money. Another way would be like house hack with an
Yeah.
FHA loan. You could get into like a 2 or 4 unit property. You can live there, rent the rest of it out, buy that deal with like 5% down, and that could be your first way to get into the business.
Gotcha. Could you explain kind of what an FHA loan is for people that don't understand what that is?
Yeah, and I'm not a loan broker at all, but just high level, it's basically a program to where first-time home buyers can get into a home at a great rate and a low down payment.
Yep. Thank you for that. And yeah, so how can aspiring young individuals that are not yet in real estate effectively like determine the most suitable type of investment, such as like an Airbnb, mobile homes, multifamily, or residential, as they embark on entering the real estate market? Because like for someone like me, I definitely am planning on like getting into real estate at some point, but I've definitely kind of had the mindset of like, oh my gosh, there's so many different investments that I can go into. What would you say is a good like way to kind of filter through that and I guess pick the right vehicle to go on?
Well, I would just work backwards. If you had to look at 3 years from now where you think your portfolio would be at, you think it'll be a portfolio of Airbnbs, single family homes, or multifamily. And the way you answer that question is what's the easiest to scale? What's easiest to manage? What's the easiest to borrow to get debt on the properties? And I think in real estate, you can make money in every asset class. If you just pick a lane, you just stick with one horse, you can make money on that. You absolutely can. Self-storage, industrial, not office right now. Airbnbs, you could single family homes, yes, multifamily for sure. So you can pick a lane and stay with it. But honestly, I think for me, it's like multifamily has such great fundamentals behind it. People are forced to rent more nowadays because they can't afford a first-time home. There's supply and demand imbalance. More people becoming renters. They want to be more transient. Multifamily is easier to scale. Like think
Mhm.
of how hard it is to buy 100 homes versus a couple 50-unit properties. It's not going to be 50 times the work, maybe
Yeah.
double. It's a lot easier to scale multifamily businesses. It's a lot easier to approve for loans on multifamily. So like banks view them as a business, not as your primary residence. So it's a lot easier to scale that and to manage. It's a lot easier to manage a large property and multifamily, assets versus a bunch of little homes. So I personally would pick multifamily. So if you work backwards, if you know your end goal of where you want to be at, I would then start to look at like a 4-unit deal.
Hmm.
I would probably start with what is the highest unit count I can get and still fit within the FHA regulations for that low down payment.
Hmm. Gotcha. So what would you say other than like let's say you buy your first property with an FHA, what would be like if you wanted to scale that and keep growing your portfolio, what are some loans that people typically use or seek out for when trying to scale?
Yeah, we've used mostly bank loans, just fixed rate bank loans. There are loan brokers you can talk to that will have a wide collection of maybe 30 banks, Fannie, Freddie, and they can help you find the right loan for the property.
Hmm.
I would just ask for introduction from someone like myself or another real estate guy that's been doing this for a while. But there's loan brokers that would love to earn 1% on a loan in exchange for
Yeah,
helping you find the right loan. So you could do that, but probably just banks, with multifamily apartments, they don't look at your credit that much. It's not about how much you make; it's how much does the property produce in income. They're underwriting the property, not so much you.
gotcha. Um, yeah, so in real estate, there's obviously, you can go to the banks or you can find like a hard money lender, all these different kind of lenders. What
Yep.
are, tell me a little bit about, you know, kind of the hard money side and finding ways to kind of like finance deals with other people.
Yeah, so that's a great point. You can use some creative financing with the sellers. That's big right now as well. So you could put an offer on a property that's owned by, mom and pop, or just one person, for example, and you could structure it to where they could hold the note or they could basically finance you the property or at least the down payment at a low interest rate, which would benefit them on the tax simplification side. They wouldn't pay capital gains tax and it would reduce how much you're going to bring to the property in cash. So there's definitely times where you can literally bring no money to the table on a deal because the seller is going to put up the down payment, as a seller note, and you get the rest from the bank. As far as hard money loans, I've not used one of those at all before. I have not done those. They're higher interest rate. I feel like those play a really good fit for short-term deals like
Mhm.
flips. You wouldn't want to hold a deal for 5 years paying, mid-teens interest rate. Just wouldn't. I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha. And yeah, so I've on it. So I met you on LinkedIn, and I've seen all of your posts that you've been putting out, and you've really been hyping up the Fishers and Lafayette area. So tell me a little bit as to why those are just two booming markets right now.
Well, let's start with Lafayette. Lafayette, I'm kind of partial to it. It's my hometown, but Lafayette and West Lafayette, I mean, they have so much demand for population there. Like people just
Yep.
moving there, that just by the hundreds and thousands. Like it was actually named in the Wall Street Journal recently as one of the top emerging markets to watch out for in the Midwest. So it's
Hmm.
on the map. And people from Chicago are moving there. You probably know that being there already. Purdue University is like going anywhere. It's a very established, great school. Um, so in countywide, Tippecanoe County, they only have a 2% vacancy rate. 2%.
Really?
So
I
yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
they can't build them fast enough. We just acquired an asset in Lafayette actually about 3 weeks ago, 44 unit deal, and they're building a brand new complex across the street from our project. And
Hmm.
so there's demand in that area, which that will only help our rents at our property because they have to pay a higher price. The new complex, they'll pay a little bit less to come to ours. So Lafayette's great. Fishers, on the other hand, I feel like is the number one spot to be in right now. It's the number 8 place to live in the U.S.
Hmm.
Carmel is number 3, which they're both side by side in the Annapolis North. Fishers, we're doing a mixed use project right now, 85 multifamily, very, very small amount commercial already leased up, and downtown Fishers. But Fishers has had 45% population growth in the last 13 years. That's
Yeah.
over double the national average. We've almost doubled the job growth rate in Fishers. Um, Jobs are coming here. People love it. It's walkable, a lot of trails. It's booming, man. It's a great place to be in.
And with all of the, development on 116th, I don't know what that, like the Fishers District,
Yep.
feel like they can build. I don't know what the plan is with like building around there, but I feel like on the other side of that, it could definitely um, grow there and build some property there. But um, thank you for sharing that. It's good to
Yeah.
know that we're both kind of living in good areas right now. But tell me a little bit how you kind of go through a deal and analyze it.
Yeah. First thing is location. Do I like the market? Does it have job growth and population growth? Does it have great schools to where tenants will want to stay there long term and not, move out? When they've got kids tied to their home, it keeps them there if they're in good schools. And is the
Hmm.
crime low? So first thing is location. Second of all, do I like the asset? Like, is the actual property itself in a good area of the neighborhood? Is it going to be growing? And then I think third would be, what are the numbers? Like, can I make the numbers work? Will the property be appreciating value every year? My number one focus is cash flow. I always invest for cash flow, number one, appreciation second. But I'd say location, the property itself, and then the actual numbers.
Gotcha. Um, and this is kind of a personal question just because I have always kind of had this question in the back of my mind, but what are your thoughts on using property managers and like when you should use them? Do you think you should use them on every deal? Do you think you should use them on certain types of deals? Tell me a little bit about that.
It comes down to how much time you have. I
Okay.
think that you can self-manage maybe the first couple deals that you do. I did not. I chose to use a third party PM out of the gate, the very first deal, and because I knew that I see my 3 year vision, right? I knew that I couldn't. It's not sustainable to self manage 200 doors. You can't do that. There's no way unless you have internal PM, in house.
Yeah.
So I knew that I might as well start with the third party PM company and use them out of the gate. Now I will say that by doing that, I didn't learn as much about the management process that I could
Gotcha.
have on my own. So I think there's some value to be had self managing a couple deals if you can, smaller units, right? But I think in your numbers, you need to plan, you need to bake in the management cost of what it would cost you if you have a manager, because someday you'll have to use somebody else to self-manage those properties.
Yeah.
I think you can learn a lot in process, but yeah, I definitely recommend using third-party PMs. They're more experienced than I am, and you are. Let them do their thing. Buy your time back, right? Buy it back. Focus on getting more deals.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then when you're setting up a like a real estate deal, um, do you set it up with like an LLC? Like, do you have an LLC for every single property that you own, or is it like kind of a umbrella kind of LLC where it's overlooking all of your properties? Tell me a little bit about that and what kind of the best way to go about that to keep your, assets protected.
Yeah, you definitely want to do a limited liability company for every asset that you have. You want to have that asset itself live within LLC. You want to do that for every property. Um, that protects you. That way it limits any kind of like lawsuits, whatnot, to that one property, to where if somebody had to latch on to something happened there, they couldn't attach all the properties you've got. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
every property we own today has its own LLC, along with different entities that manage it, as well. And then overall, Focus Capital has its own holding company that that owns the interest in all the properties.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then last question for you today, Chad. What are two of the most impactful factors that have contributed to your success in real estate and business? And how could others incorporate these elements in their own lives for similar achievements like yours?
Two factors, man. I would say um personal growth has been huge. Like I think investing in yourself is probably the most important investment to make, to be honest. you know if you can grow yourself, that's just gonna there's gonna be multiples of success down the road. It starts with you, right? You're like the foundation of your business. Like if you don't grow, you can't understand more, you can't lead better. So like being able for me to learn how to lead, manage people, it's been the hardest thing to do with this business. It's been the most rewarding thing, but it's also been the most challenging, how to raise capital. So I'd say two things. One is develop yourself. Number two is get out there and network. In real estate, networking and your network is literally your net worth. Like that, it all comes down to who you know and relationships. Like like the Fishers project we're doing right now, that
Mhm.
happened because of a relationship that I had. It wasn't a deal that I found. Somebody else did in my network. So I would
Who
get out
should
there and network.
who should people be networking with?
Number one should be brokers that have real estate listings. So if you want to find your first deal, that'd be the best way to find a property is through the brokers like Marks and Millichap, Cushman Wakefield, some of the smaller brokers. Get on LoopNet, Crexy, the brokers that are posting stuff in there. Network with them because you want to be on the inside circle when they have like a small off-market deal. Because those guys, they don't love the small stuff. They might just toss it off to you, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you want to be on the inside circle. The best deals I've ever done were all off-market deals, the best ones.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, awesome, man. Those are two great pieces of advice, in my opinion. I couldn't agree more. But those are all the questions I have for you today, Chad. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and taking time out of your day to drop some real good real estate value to me and our listeners. It's been a pleasure discussing all the great things you've been working on, Focus Capital, just everything we talked about. Thought we had a great discussion. And to my listeners, I hope you all got something out of this episode. So please save and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Remember to win the day. Peace.